I'm here on behalf of 9/11 Health Watch and the Feel Good Foundation. We're doing this program to provide background on the Victims' Compensation Fund for the World Trade Center, responders and survivors. And with me today is Rupa Bhattacharya, who's the head of the Victims' Compensation Fund. And I'll let Rupa introduce herself and give a little bit of her background.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to 9/11 Health Watch and to the Feel Good Foundation for giving us the opportunity today to talk about the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, or the VCF. My name is Rupa Bhattacharya. I am the Special Master for the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, which is administered by the United States Department of Justice. I was appointed last year in July of 2016 by the Attorney General to run the Victims' Compensation Fund. I'm a full-time government employee, and it's been my privilege to work on this very unique program.
Okay, thank you, Rupa. And just a reminder, the contact number for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which we'll keep up on, it's on the screen right now, and we'll keep that up on the screen during this program. So if you are watching this now or have questions later, or watching this later on and have questions for the Victims' Compensation Fund, you can reach that number, which is open from 9 to 5 on weekdays every day. And that's 9 to 5 Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time, depending on what time of year it is. So Rupa, let me start with asking you about what makes a person eligible for applying for the Victims' Compensation Fund?
So the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund is an effort to try to provide compensation to those who suffered health effects as a result of the events of September 11th. We are a program that is available both to the responders who responded to the event, but also to those who lived, worked, or traveled through the area if they suffered health effects as a result of their 9/11 experiences. In order to be eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, you have to demonstrate that you were present in the area of either the World Trade Center in New York City or at the Pentagon or the Shanksville sites. For our purposes in New York City, our New York exposure zone is every part of Manhattan that is south of Canal Street. And so anyone who lived, worked, responded to the site, or was in that area south of Canal Street in Manhattan between September 11th and May 30th of 2002, which is when the official New York recovery effort closed, can demonstrate their presence for our purposes. In order to be eligible for compensation, you also have to demonstrate that you have a health condition that is related to 9/11, and what we're looking at and what we are limited to compensating for are physical health conditions. We are statutorily precluded from compensating for mental health conditions, but we look at all of the physical health conditions that are identified by the World Trade Center Health Program, which is our sister program, which provides treatment and monitoring to both responders and survivors. And those conditions are also eligible for compensation in our program. You also have to file a timely claim, and I think we'll talk a little bit about the registration deadlines. And one of the requirements of our program, because it is intended to be an alternative to litigation, is you do have to waive the right to file any lawsuit arising out of your 9/11 injuries. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, there is a waiver of litigation rights that goes along with filing a claim in the program.
Maybe we can back up to the registration part. Can sort of explain what does it take for a person to become registered for the program?
Sure.
How do they go about doing it, and what's the process?
Sure. So the process is very simple. So our process really is in two phases. There's what we call registration, and then there's claim submission. The registration process is very simple. It's basic biographical information. It can be done on our website, or it can be done by calling our toll-free helpline, and someone can walk you through the registration process. It's basically name, address, and other basic information about that identify you so that you hold your place in line to file a claim later. Once you've registered, you have up until the closing date of our program, which is December 18th, 2020, under the current law, to actually submit your claim. And so the registration is what sort of reserves your right to file a claim in the program.
Okay. And then how do you go about filing the claim? What's required for that?
So in order to file the claim, again, it can all be done electronically online through our website. You do not need an attorney to file a claim in our program, although many of our claimants are represented by attorneys, but it's not required. We have resources available to people who want to file unrepresented, including our helpline. You can make an appointment with them and they will sit down and walk you through how to file a claim in the program. In order to file a claim, you have to demonstrate the components of eligibility that we talked about. You do have to demonstrate that you were present in the area between September 11th and May 30th of 2002, and that requires documentation of presence. We're usually looking for things like affidavits from eyewitnesses who saw you there, employment records that might place you at in the area, mortgage documents or leasing documents that demonstrate that you lived in the area, utility bills. There's a variety of different documents that can satisfy that requirement, and we've got lots of examples listed in the materials that are available on our website. You also do have to have a health condition that is related to your 9/11 exposure, and what we in most cases are relying on for that is a certification from the World Trade Center Health Program. If you have that certification, that's all you have to demonstrate.
And what if you don't have that certification?
So our best advice is to get one. It really is the easiest way to file a claim in the program, and it also provides you with the services and the benefits that are available through the World Trade Center Health Program. We do have a limited process that we call our private physician process that is available for people who can't get to the health program for some reason, or have suffer serious hardship from going to the health program. And for those people, you can come in with medical records from your private physician, and we will evaluate whether or not we can take your claim under that private physician process. But it is very limited because we do think that the health program is the best way to get entree into our program.
So you've registered, you've filed your claim, you've got the evidence in that you are eligible, that you worked in the area, lived in the area, whatever, worked at the site, and are eligible as a responder. You have evidence that you have a World Trade Center related condition that's eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund. Then what happens? What happens to your claim?
So what happens to your claim? So what happens to your claim is that I have a staff of about 147 people, and we are responsible for reviewing those claims. And we have spent a lot of time in the last year, as many of you know, Jim, the program was supposed to expire in October of this year, and in December of 2015, Congress renewed it for another 5 years. And so that's what gives us that December 18th, 2020 closure date. After the reauthorization, we have spent a lot of time looking at our processes and streamlining what we're doing so that we can increase the speed of our claim adjudication process. One of the unique things about our program is that every claim is looked at individually. There's no cookie cutter awards here. We are looking at each individual claim to see what sort of compensation best addresses the needs of the person who's filing with the program. So it does take some time. And there was a very significant backlog when I came into the program about just over a year ago. But we're making progress clearing that backlog. We are now deciding claims that were fully submitted with all the paperwork that's needed in the later part of 2015 and the early part of 2016. We process about 600 claims every couple of months. We just processed 596 claims in the last 2 months, and so we're hoping that we can continue to increase our speed and get decisions out to people as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. And then, can you sort of explain what kind of compensation do people get? What do they get compensated for in the program?
Sure. So our program generally compensates for 2 different kinds of losses. There's what we call non-economic loss, which is a pain and suffering award. And in order to qualify for a non-economic loss, All you have to do is meet our eligibility requirements. So if you're found eligible in the program, you've demonstrated presence, you have a certified health condition, you've met our timeliness requirements, you've waived your right to file a lawsuit, then you qualify for a non-economic loss award. And those awards are based on the severity of the conditions that you have and the effects that they have on your activities of daily living. They are capped in the most recent version of the statute at certain levels, depending on the kinds of conditions. They do not depend, the non-economic loss awards do not depend on the number of conditions or certifications that you have. We look at them as a whole and assess what their effect is on the activities of daily life. The second kind of compensation that we provide is what we call economic loss compensation, and that is really intended for those people who have suffered a significant loss because they can no longer work as a result of their 9/11 conditions. In order to qualify for an economic loss award, we do require that the claimant have a disability determination from a third party. So, in other words, we need the Social Security Administration, or for many of our responder claimants, the Fire Department of New York or the Police Department, or the Workers' Compensation Board of New York to determine that a person is occupationally disabled and to attribute that disability to their 9/11 condition. Once we have that third-party determination, we can rely upon that in order to assess how much income, how much benefits, how much pension may have been lost as a result of the inability to work due to the condition, and we can make an award on that basis.
And what would happen if you have that kind of evaluation, a workers' compensation evaluation, but your condition's gotten worse in the last few years? Or is there another process that allows people to get reevaluated?
So one of the significant unique features of the VCF is that we have what I like to call our endless amendment policy. Any claimant, even one who's already been compensated in the program, if they suffer a new loss, if they're diagnosed with a new condition, can come back and amend their claim and seek additional compensation if that's warranted. And we do look at all of those amendments on a regular basis. So we do have a number of claimants who are coming back into the program, unfortunately, because they've been diagnosed with a new condition, or because the condition that was not so bad a few years ago has now progressed to the point where it's disabling and they've suffered a new loss.
And one recent change that you made in the program that I think is important for everyone to realize, and source of confusion because it is a significant change in your policy, is when does a condition, what's the deadline for filing for a condition that's World Trade Center related? Well, what triggers that?
So thank you very much for asking that. We have clarified our policy around the deadlines because we realized coming into the reauthorization that there was a lot of confusion and a lot of people who felt like they had missed their deadlines. Prior to our clarification, we were looking at diagnosis dates. When were you diagnosed with the condition? And that triggered the filing deadline. But what the statute actually says is that someone must file their claim within 2 years of the date on which they knew or should have known that they had a condition and that that condition was related to their 9/11 exposure. And so what we've done is we've clarified that in order to be timely in our program, you have to register your claim, meaning you just have to file that basic demographic information that we talked about, not a full submission, just registration. You have to register your claim within 2 years of the date on which a governmental entity told you that your condition was related to your 9/11 exposure. So what are we talking about? So we're talking about the date on which the World Trade Center Health Program sent you a letter that said you're certified for these conditions because we found them to be related to your 9/11 exposure. We're talking about the dates on which the fire department or the police department or the NYSERS pension boards say you have a World Trade Center related disability, or the workers' comp board says you have a World Trade Center related disability. Those dates are what now trigger the 2-year period because we found that relying on the diagnosis date was just confusing for everyone.
So that means if you were diagnosed with cancer in 2012, it's on the list of World Trade Center related cancers, but you were diagnosed by a private physician, you didn't realize that you were eligible for the VCF at that point, you missed that deadline, But then you join the medical program or a compensation program that recognize that condition as World Trade Center related, you would then be eligible for the program.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the eligibility deadline will run, if you don't have a disability determination from one of the city employers,
Yeah.
will run 2 years from the date on which you're certified in the World Trade Center Health Program.
Okay. Oh, good. What do you do? We've covered sort of the amendment process. We've covered the basic eligibility. What's the most common source of confusion for people about the program? What do they get concerned about or don't seem to understand or need to understand about the program?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we saw very frequently early on in the program is that a lot of people thought that the program was limited to the responder community, to the people who actually were the firefighters and the emergency workers and the police officers who responded to the site. And that is an extremely important part of our program, and I think we're very much the impetus for the creation of the program, but our program is not limited to responders. The compensation that's available under the program is available to anyone who was in the area, in New York in particular, south of Canal Street, that was exposed to the toxins in the air and the dust that was the result of the building collapses. I think there's been a lot of study and research that's been done in many of the health programs constituencies about the effects that all of that have had. And so our program is available both to the responders and the survivors of the tragedy, and we don't distinguish between the two groups. So long as someone meets our eligibility requirements and has been certified with a World Trade Center related physical health condition, they will be eligible for compensation in our program.
Okay, so that helps, I think, a lot of people that were may have missed the original deadlines, didn't understand what they needed to do. What other issues come up that cause people concern?
So, one of the things that we're often asked about is why do we only cover certain conditions? Yeah. The conditions that we cover are dictated by two things. Number one, they're dictated by the statute, which does limit us to covering only the physical health conditions. We are explicitly precluded from compensating for mental health conditions by the statute. And it's a limitation that we have to live with. The other thing that dictates the conditions that we cover are the determinations that are made by the World Trade Center Health Program. We rely on the health program and its administrator, Dr. Howard, who I understand will be here tomorrow
yes.
speaking at an event, to identify those conditions that can be medically tied to exposure to the toxins that were in the air after September 11th. And so we rely on the list that they've created, that the health program has created of the conditions that are covered, and those are the conditions that we will find eligible as well.
And those change over time.
They do change over time.
Yeah.
Since the Zadroga Act was passed in 2011, the World Trade Center Health Program has added a number of conditions, most recently in 2014. And so we have seen new conditions added to the program. I know that they have the ability to consider other conditions. And so we do urge people, if your condition isn't covered today, please keep an eye on what the World Trade Center Health Program is doing, because it may be covered before our program closes in 2020.
And as Rupa just mentioned, mind you, she advertised we're interviewing John Howard tomorrow at 11 a.m. the same time. And again, reminding you that the so-called 800 number, which is actually an 855 number for the VCF, should be up on the screen. So if you have follow-up calls, as well as their website, which has a lot of detailed and very useful information on how to apply the program. And again, a reminder that this program, this interview and the information for both today and for tomorrow will be available on Facebook for I don't know how many years, but for a period of time. So if you want to refer back, or if you're just tuning in and just happen to want to have more information that we may have already covered, it's obviously available to you to go back and go over this. Now, we obviously can't cover all the detail. There's lots of detail, lots of individual circumstances, but this basic information will be available to you at the time. So I'll just go back to one thing that I think does cause a concern. Maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit more, which is the length of time to go through the process. Are there things that people can do that can, or other attorneys on their behalf do to help facilitate going through the process?
Sure. You know, I really appreciate the question. We have taken, since the reauthorization, we've taken a really hard look at our processes and tried to figure out what has been my number one priority since I started just over a year ago, how to increase the speed with which we get awards out to the people who really need the compensation. So what can people do? File complete claims. When we send requests for missing information, please respond to them. We do copy both the attorneys and the claimants on requests for missing information so that everyone knows what it is that we're looking for. Take a look before you file a claim, or even if you've already filed a claim, at our policies and procedures document, which is posted online. It's an extensive document, but we've tried very hard to be very transparent about what it is that we're looking for, what sorts of documents we need, why we need them, and which ones are important. And so having a sense of what's in that document and what we're looking for can really help you pull together the information that's necessary to file the claim. We realize that it's been a number of years, obviously, since the attacks of September 11th, and while the effects continue to be felt by many of you, documents are not always readily available. We have very strong relationships with a lot of the employers in the New York City area who provide a lot of information to us, and that relieves some of the burden on the claimants. But for those of you who really can't come up with anything, we do urge you to take the time to try to figure out what you have, file what you have. If your claim is denied, we have a hearings process that is available. You can appeal your denial if, for example, you haven't provided sufficient proof of presence, and we will bring you in. We have a cadre of very experienced hearing officers who do completely non-adversarial hearings, but they will put you under oath, they will listen to your testimony, they will give you a chance to tell your story, and oftentimes that can cure a document deficiency when presence information is not otherwise readily available. Look, it's easier for everyone if we have documents, but if you don't have them, there still may be a way to get into the program.
And I can testify, I've heard many good stories from people going through the hearing process, and again, where documentation just isn't available, and they people have lost documentation, or they were in the nature of their circumstances where they were there really was hard to get any documentation. It's just who happened to be around or who would see them. But it's also the credibility of what they may have told the health program or told a spouse or family member about what they experienced, and it can really help a lot to do that. One thing I've told you I wouldn't ask you about were all the statistics on the program, but can you hit some of the highlights? Because I think people need to understand how big this program is and how much money's been awarded to people over time from this.
Yeah, it's a very big program. So when the statute was originally passed in 2011, creating the Zajoga program, it was appropriated with $2.775 billion. In 2015, when it was reauthorized, Congress added another $4.6 billion. So we have a total of $7.375 billion, if I got the math right on that. But we're making progress. We have issued over 14,000 compensation determinations, which means we've issued 14,000 awards totaling over $3 billion. And so So we have about 20,000 eligibility claims that have been filed with the program. We've decided, sorry, I take that back. We have about 30,000 eligibility claims that have been filed. We've decided about 20,000 of them. So that's sort of what is still outstanding in terms of claims where we still have to decide eligibility, and then presumably we will have compensation claims coming in to decide after that. So it is a very big program, but we're making substantial progress, and we hope that those of you who are tracking our progress carefully have seen that happen.
And you certainly have helped a lot of people. I mean, that's
Yes, we certainly have.
Need to
it's one of the very
appreciate.
unique things
Yeah.
about the program that I feel so privileged to be
Yeah.
able to participate in something that helps so many.
Yeah. One of the, I'm just told that the most common question coming in, or at least the biggest question that people seem to be concerned about, is what about other conditions that aren't covered by the current program? And I'm going to save some of that for Dr. Howard tomorrow, because NIOSH is the one. But can you tell us how does the process like reopen when a new condition comes on, and what is your role in that process and so forth?
Right. So the way it works for us is we do rely on the health program to identify the conditions that are related to 9/11 exposure. If they identify a new condition, then a new certification for that condition will reopen the 2-year registration period so that people can file that claim. And one of the sort of policy decisions that we've made is that if you come in with a new condition, what we've said is that our compensation determination will take into account all of your other conditions that are also related to your 9/11 exposure, even if you hadn't filed a timely claim for those conditions. So the reopening of the registration window sort of brings the entire claim back into the program. And the mechanism for doing that for new filers, of course, is to file a new claim. But for those who have already been in our program, is to file an amendment on the claim that already exists. If you're certified with a new condition, either because you've gotten sick again, unfortunately, or because the health program has identified new conditions that are available for certification, you can amend your claim to seek additional losses if those are available.
Okay. So you're open, as you said, open forever. I mean, it's
well,
constantly
no, we're not
changing.
open forever.
Well, you're open forever to new issues, but again, the deadline you're going to.
Per the current statute, our application
Yeah.
deadline is December 18th, 2020. So that is the date by which all new claims and all amendments on existing claims have to be filed in order for us to be able to process them. We are tasked by the statute with doing an annual reassessment of the program so that we can provide Congress, who watches the program very closely, with some statistics about what we're seeing, the sorts of trends we're seeing, how much money is going out, how much more we anticipate will go out, how many more claims we expect to see. And so we hope that they're keeping an eye on the program too, so that they can see whether or not there remains a continuing need.
We're running out of time. So any last words for people, advice?
I don't know that I have a lot of advice for people. I do urge people, if you think you might be eligible, if you're interested in the program, please call our toll-free helpline. We've got people there. We've got interpreters available. They can answer your questions. They can direct you to the right resources. As Jim mentioned, we have a lot of resources on the website, so please look at them. You know, one of the things that I found most astonishing about this program when I started over a year ago is the attacks of 9/11 affected all of us, but the fact that so many people are still suffering as a result of their illnesses was something that I really hadn't been acutely aware of. And it is, while it goes without saying that there's no amount of money that can compensate for those losses, we do try to do what we can, and it is really an honor that the American people and Congress have seen fit to create a program that can give that bit of solace to the people who continue to suffer. And so I really do hope that everyone who is eligible takes the opportunity to try to find out more about the program and see if they can apply.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you all for participating and listening and getting your comments in. And again, take this to heart. And if there's, hopefully, this has been helpful, and you'll understand the program. Particularly if you haven't applied yet, it's really important to start the process now. And if you believe you're eligible, and either call the helpline or get a claim and the registration going so that you can benefit in the way that everyone deserves to be benefited who has suffered because of what happened on 9/11. So thank you, and Rupa, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.